startups versus corporates, that's a big difference, right? That's like two completely different worlds, also here in Germany. So if you're looking for jobs right now, or if you're trying to make up your mind, if you have to decide between two different options, here are some insights into the main differences and what you can expect, which will probably help you in making a decision. But before we talk about that, make sure that you hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. Make sure that you activate the small bell, which will give you notifications whenever we upload something, because on our channel you will find all about work and life in Germany, and we do answer all these questions that are coming up when you move to Germany, when you try to find jobs here, or even if you're just struggling with life in Germany, we are there to help you. But let's get back to this topic of startups versus corporates. So I think first of all, if you look at the startup and corporate landscape in Germany, I think the differences you will find are probably very similar to what you will see abroad. I mean, I think these are common characteristics. So if you have worked in a startup or in a corporate abroad, of course, the setup will be different here. We probably have a different work culture, but there are some general character traits which I think are pretty much the same. But let's take a look at startups first. I would say, looking at startups right over here in Germany, we have a vibrant landscape, particularly here in Berlin. There are a lot of options for internationals right now. And I would say working in a startup definitely means, from my experience, that it's very flexible. It's a very fast-paced environment. And this fast pace also means that it's constantly changing. So if you are a kind of person who likes to be creative, to be innovative, to come up with lean and fast solutions, and have a, let's say, very, fast and high learning curve, if you really are interested in that, if you're interested in taking over a lot of responsibility in a short amount of time, even if you don't have that much experience, then I think a startup could be a very interesting place to work in. So this is what you can expect. On the other hand, startups, of course, offer a bit of less safe environment. So you never know, how things work out. So the budget may probably be less as compared to a corporate, of course. Although there are also a lot of startups who have great funding. So it doesn't always mean that you have to cut back that much on salary. But of course, it's less than working for a corporate. So the funds will probably be less if you look at pros versus cons. And of course, you don't really know where this company will be in a few years, right? You don't have this very clear perspective. This is what my career will look like. These are the kind of trainings I will get. These are the kind of promotions I will get. So this is something you don't know with a startup. So if you're someone who really likes very detailed planning, it's probably not the right place to move into. On the other hand, startups here tend to have more of a flat hierarchy, which is kind of nice. It's a bit less formal environment, and you often have a lot of intangible benefits in place. So very nice team structures. People who are very passionate about their work environment. You have, and then there's the startup cliche, right? You have a pool table in the office. You often, like here in Berlin, you often have nice offices, but you never know. It really depends on the company. But I think in general, this is what a startup has to offer. And I think a startup is a good place to work, a good match for you if you're a kind of person who likes fast-paced environments which are changing very often, a person who's very passionate about the work that you're doing. That's really, really important if you are working for a startup. And of course, also if you're someone who likes to take over responsibility, who likes to be accountable for things, because if you have a small team, you need to be really accountable for your task, and your responsibilities are probably not always clearly defined. So from my experience, startups really want persons who are highly accountable, who have an overview of the process, who keep track of things and take things over, who are like kind of hands-on about this. So if you have this kind of mindset, I think a startup could be a very good place to work in. Let's take a look at corporates on the opposite. I think the good thing about corporates here is that they often offer a very good work-life balance and very good employee benefits and a very good salary, because here in Germany we have a very employee-friendly environment. So labor unions are very strong. So if you're working for one of the big corporates, you will, just have a good work-life balance. Of course, depending on your role, it's not always the case. It also depends a bit depending on the company. But in general, the benefits will be good. The balance will probably be better as compared to working in a startup. And also, you usually have more perspectives in terms of internal development within the company. So in a startup, you don't know. I mean, they may grow and you may have the option to expand to another market somewhere. So there can be a lot of options, but you don't know. With a corporate, they often have several locations, several departments. So you really have this option to go for different locations if it's important for you to be able to move to a different location or gain experience in another country. This could be very interesting for you, particularly also if you're an international. If you're already working for a corporate, it could also be interesting to have a transfer within the company, right? So this is also something I've seen quite often. So this is, I would say, a benefit of working for a corporate. And also you have a very clear outlook. So usually very clearly defined processes, which also give you an expectation. Like if you're aiming for a management role, you have a very clear time frame. But the downside is it can take years. And I think that's also one of the main differences compared to a startup. So processes tend to be much slower. Innovation is often very slow. It takes time until you take over responsibility, or until you get a management role, because there are very clear processes in place. On the other hand, you often have a very high budget for training options, and you have this very clear outlook what you have to do to get into a management position. So I would say that's both a downside, but also a positive thing, depending on what you like, what your personal preferences are. And then, of course, I think a big factor is that you have this financial stability. So you have a bigger budget. Often when you handle projects, the budget is simply bigger. So if that's important for you, then a corporate may be a better place for you to work in. And it's a kind of safe environment, particularly here in Germany. If you sign a work contract with a corporate, it's almost impossible to fire you. I mean, it's possible, but there are a lot of things that you have to do wrong to get fired here. So you have a really safe workplace. And we recently discussed this also. I was recently a guest in a really nice podcast, which is hosted by Sean from South Africa, who lives in Germany since several years. And he has this great podcast, which is called The Germany Experience. And we talked about what to expect from a workplace here in Germany. So if you're interested in that, I will link the recording of this session here, and you can also check out Sean's podcast, which is really, really interesting. It gives a lot of interesting insights about work and life in general. He always has there are different expats, different persons on his podcasts, and they cover everything about this whole expat experience here in Germany. But let's get back to the corporates. So I think a corporate is a good place for you if it's important for you to have a safe work environment, to have good financial resources, to have a very clear outlook, and if you're not into having changes all the time. If you prefer to have processes in place, and I think corporate could be probably a better place for you to work in. And also if you are aiming more for a long-term career within the same environment, if you want a clear outlook, a corporate could be very, very interesting for you. But I would say it really depends on your personality. If you are really, really passionate about work, then a startup could probably be better. But the downside is you have to deal with this, with having less funds, with having less, let's say, safety, so you don't know how it will go for this company, but you can also grow a bit faster probably because you can take over responsibility at a very early stage. But that's just a general comparison. So I think if you are currently trying to answer this question for you, the main thing you have to think about is what matters to me. How important is the passion? Like how passionate am I about the product itself? Although you can also be passionate about the product if you work for a corporate, of course, but you need to be really passionate about your work if you have a very high pace environment. So how important is this to me? Then how important is work-life balance for me? How important are the persons that are surrounding me? Like what kind of mindset should these persons have? And yeah, do I want a safe workplace? Do I want a big budget? Do I want a big team or a smaller team? So this is, I think these are questions that only you can answer. But I hope this general overview here was helpful for you, and maybe this gives you a bit of a starting point to figure out yeah, what to expect from a startup versus a corporate, and what kind of option would be the best one for you. So all the best. I'm curious to hear how your job search or how your decision turned out, and what your thoughts about startups versus corporates are. You've probably worked in a startup or a corporate here in Germany or abroad. So do leave the comments here. Do let us know what your experiences were, what you think are good things and bad things about these two different worlds. So leave your comments here. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button, and looking forward to see you again in one of our events. And yeah, do stay tuned.